Bismillah, my dear brothers and sisters, happiness is not the absence of hardship. If that were true, none of us would ever be happy, because life, by Allah's design, is a test. Happiness is the state of the heart that knows its place with its Lord. The idea that hardship is a divine assignment, not a punishment, changes the entire way a person experiences difficulty. When something painful happens in life, our immediate reaction is often emotional. Why me? Why now? What did I do wrong? But when you understand that Allah places difficulty in your life with precision, intention, and mercy, the tone of the entire experience changes. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances, you begin to see yourself as a student in a classroom designed by the Most Wise. Hardship becomes a lesson, not a sentence. It becomes an opportunity, not a dead end. Imagine a teacher giving a student a challenging assignment. Not because the teacher dislikes the student, but because the teacher believes in their potential and wants them to grow. Similarly, Allah knows your capacity better than you ever will. He knows the strength hidden within you, the spiritual muscles you have not yet discovered, the layers of resilience buried under comfort. Without hardship, these qualities may never emerge. Just as a seed must split to grow, the heart sometimes must break open to expand. Hardship is the divine way of making you more capable, more sincere, more connected to Allah, and more compassionate toward others. When you shift your mindset in this way, you stop interpreting difficulty as a sign of divine anger. Instead, you see it as evidence of divine attention. Allah is not ignoring you. He is engaging you. He is refining you, preparing you, elevating you. And because He is Ar-Rahman, He never gives a test heavier than your ability. Even when something feels overwhelming, it is precisely measured. Your emotions may say, "I cannot handle this," but your Creator, who knows every detail of your heart, says, "You can and you will. I'm with you." Seeing hardship as an assignment also removes the heaviness of comparison. When you look around at people who seem to have easier lives, you might feel that you were chosen for more pain. But the truth is that every person's assignment is tailored to them. Some are tested through relationships, some through illness, some through loneliness, some through loss, and some through blessings themselves. No two tests are identical, and no soul escapes being tested. Understanding this frees you from resentment and allows you to focus on your assignment, not someone else's. Another important aspect is that divine assignments are meant to transform. Hardship pushes you to turn inward, to examine your habits, your intentions, and your closeness to Allah. It invites you to question what you truly rely on in life. When everything is going well, it is easy to believe that we are in control. But hardship reminds us that the true control has always belonged to Allah. This realization brings humility, and humility opens the door to spiritual growth. Many people say that the closest moments they ever felt to Allah were born from times they thought they would never survive. This perspective also brings hope. If hardship were a punishment, you would feel trapped. But if it is an assignment, then it has an end, a purpose, and a reward. Assignments are completed, tests are graded. And when you endure with patience, gratitude, and trust, Allah elevates you in ways you could never elevate yourself. Every tear becomes a witness in your favor. Every struggle becomes a step toward a higher station. Every moment of pain becomes a seed for future ease. So when you look at your hardships, try to see the divine wisdom behind them. They were not random. They were not cruel. They were placed in your path because Allah loves you enough to teach you, shape you, cleanse you, and bring you closer to Him. And when the heart recognizes this, hardship becomes lighter, not because the situation changes, but because you do. A heart connected to Allah is a heart that cannot be defeated, because it draws its strength from a source that never weakens. People often search for stability in things that constantly change. Relationships, careers, wealth, health, social approval. These things can bring comfort, but they are never permanent. They rise and fall, come and go, and shift without warning. When your emotional well-being is tied to something unstable, your heart will always reflect that instability. It will swing between hope and fear, confidence and insecurity, joy and despair. But when the heart is anchored to Allah, the one whose mercy never ends, whose knowledge is perfect, and whose power controls every detail of your life, then the fluctuations of the world lose their power over you. This connection is not abstract or distant. It is built through small and consistent acts of remembrance, gratitude, obedience, and trust. When you wake up and immediately remember Allah, your day begins with direction. When you pray with presence, even for a few minutes, the energy of your heart is re-centered. When you recite or listen to the Quran, you are reminding yourself of guidance greater than your own thoughts and fears. When you pause in the middle of stress to say, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, you release what you cannot control and hand it to the one who can. Each of these small efforts creates spiritual stability, much like nails securing a tent in strong winds. The more you secure your heart with remembrance, the less it sways in the storms of life. A heart connected to Allah also becomes more resilient because it adopts a different lens through which to view challenges. Instead of interpreting hardship as abandonment, it sees hardship as an invitation to turn closer to its Creator. Instead of feeling humiliated by failure, it understands that failure may be a redirection towards something better. Instead of panicking when plans fall apart, it trusts that Allah's plan is greater, even if it is not yet visible. This shift in perspective transforms the emotional experience of life. You no longer walk through the world with fear of what could go wrong. You walk with confidence in the one who manages every outcome. People often underestimate the power of spiritual connection in psychological well-being. They assume that happiness is built solely through worldly achievement or emotional comfort. But countless people with success, wealth, and admiration still feel deeply empty. Their hearts are restless because they are disconnected from the one who created those hearts. The Prophet said, "In the body there is a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. That piece is the heart, and its soundness comes from its alignment with Allah." When the heart finds Him, it finds itself. A connected heart also becomes less dependent on others for validation. You no longer beg for appreciation, fear rejection, or crumble when people disappoint you. You learn that human beings are limited. They love imperfectly, support inconsistently, and understand incompletely. But Allah knows you entirely, loves you unconditionally, and responds immediately when you call. This realization frees you from emotional dependence and gives you inner strength. You can love people without worshiping them, rely on them without collapsing when they fail, and interact with them without letting your self-worth be dictated by their opinions. This type of inner strength is not loud or aggressive. It is calm, grounded, and steady. It shows in the way you handle stress, the way you speak, the way you respond to hurt, and the way you rise after disappointment. People may wonder how you stay composed when life becomes difficult. They may assume you have an easy life or extraordinary resilience. But the truth is that your strength comes from your reliance on Allah. You are not standing alone. You are supported by the One who cannot be overcome. Such a heart may bend, but it does not break. It may be tested, but it is never truly defeated. Gratitude turns what you have into enough, because it shifts your focus from what is missing to what is already present, and that shift alone can transform the entire emotional landscape of a person's life. Human beings naturally incline toward noticing what they lack. It is part of the way we are created. The mind quickly identifies gaps, things we wish we had, problems we wish would disappear, blessings we feel others have more of. Without conscious effort, this mindset creates a constant state of dissatisfaction. You might have good health, but focus on the money you don't have. You might have supportive loved ones, but focus on the opportunities that slipped away. Gratitude interrupts this pattern. It pulls your attention toward the silent gifts you walk past every day, and once your eyes begin to see them, your heart begins to lighten. Gratitude is not something that appears only when life is easy. In fact, the most powerful form of gratitude emerges precisely when things aren't going the way you hoped. Anyone can say, Alhamdulillah, when blessings overflow, but the heart that can say it during difficulty is a heart that understands the deeper wisdom behind existence. Gratitude during hardship does not deny the pain. It simply widens your vision. It allows you to feel sadness, yet still recognize that Allah has not left you empty-handed. You may lose one thing, but still possess countless others. Gratitude teaches you to notice those countless others and to realize that what remains is still enough to live, breathe, love, grow, and hope. Another reason gratitude transforms your inner state is that it aligns your heart with truth. The truth is that every blessing, whether small or enormous, comes from Allah. Your breath, your sight, your mobility, your family, your safety, your ability to think, your moments of joy, your food, your shelter, and even the peace in your chest when it appears are all gifts. When you acknowledge them, you are not simply being polite, you are recognizing the generous hand of your Creator. This recognition brings softness to the heart. It reminds you that you are cared for, provided for, and surrounded by mercy. When the heart feels cared for, it becomes calmer. Gratitude becomes a form of healing. Practicing gratitude also retrains the emotional habits of the soul. Negativity and comparison are habits. Deep grooves the mind falls into without effort. But gratitude is also a habit. The more you intentionally list your blessings, the more naturally your mind will begin to notice them on its own. Instead of waking up thinking about what could go wrong, you begin to notice simple morning mercies: waking up safely, being able to move, seeing the sunlight, hearing familiar voices. These are not small things, they are miracles that millions of people pray for. As your awareness grows, your perspective shifts. You feel abundance where you once felt lack. Gratitude also has a direct impact on relationships. When you focus on what others do wrong, you feel distant from them. When you focus on what they do right, your heart softens toward them. The same applies to your relationship with yourself. If you constantly highlight your flaws and failures, you will feel inadequate. But if you appreciate your growth, your efforts, your patience, and your resilience, your confidence strengthens. Gratitude becomes a bridge, connecting hearts, strengthening bonds, and creating emotional safety. Another subtle but profound aspect of gratitude is that it invites more blessings. This is a promise from Allah. If you are grateful, I will surely increase you. Gratitude is not just a feeling, it is a magnet for more good. When your heart appreciates what it has, Allah increases it. Sometimes by giving you more, and sometimes by making what you already have feel richer, deeper, and more fulfilling. You may not gain new blessings, but your perception of existing blessings expands so beautifully that it feels like increase. Ultimately, gratitude transforms enough into abundance because it transforms the heart itself. It teaches you to recognize hidden gifts, appreciate overlooked mercies, and find beauty even in imperfect situations. A grateful heart is lighter, more hopeful, and more peaceful. Not because life becomes perfect, but because the heart stops chasing perfection and begins appreciating the blessing of simply being alive. You said, XPAIN 4KY umboitu to diens enengis anqngsuo an 600 moadis ChatGPT said what you consume shapes your heart because the heart is deeply impressionable, constantly absorbing the influences around it, just as the body absorbs what you eat and drink. If you fill your body with unhealthy food, you eventually see the effects: fatigue, sickness, lack of energy. Likewise, when the heart is fed a steady diet of negativity, comparison, noise, and distraction, it begins to feel heavy, restless, and unsatisfied. People sometimes wonder why their peace is fragile, why their happiness disappears quickly, or why they feel spiritually distant. Much of the answer lies in what they regularly expose their hearts to without realizing the impact. Every image you see, every word you read, every conversation you join, and every environment you sit in leaves a imprint imprint on your heart. The accumulation of these imprints eventually shapes your emotional and spiritual state. When you constantly scroll through social media filled with curated lives, artificial beauty, and endless comparison, your heart silently absorbs the message that what you have is not enough. You may feel envy without realizing it, or dissatisfaction with your own life, even though nothing has changed. The act of comparison injures the heart more subtly than any physical harm, and yet it is one of the most common conditions of modern times. Protecting your heart begins with protecting what your eyes and mind consume. What you listen to also affects the condition of your heart. Words carry emotional weight. Repeated exposure to gossip, complaining, arguments, or profanity makes the heart accustomed to negativity. Over time, it becomes less sensitive to spiritual reminders and more responsive to worldly noise. Conversely, listening to the Quran, to beneficial lectures, and to uplifting conversations can brighten the heart. These sounds wash the inner self, giving it clarity and peace. People often underestimate how much their moods are shaped by the tones and messages they allow into their environment. A person who surrounds themselves with constant chatter or negativity will naturally feel drained, while a person who chooses purposeful, calming content will find emotional strength more easily. Even the environments you stay in shape your heart. Being around people who complain all the time teaches your heart to complain. Being around people who are grateful encourages your heart to reflect that gratitude. Being in places filled with reminders of Allah, like the masjid, a study circle, or even a quiet corner of your home dedicated to prayer, can transform your state of mind. The heart adapts to its surroundings the same way a plant grows toward the light or withers in the shade. This is why choosing your company matters. Hearts influence each other, and your emotional climate can shift simply by spending time with people who uplift you or drag you down. Another important aspect of guarding your consumption is recognizing the difference between harmless entertainment and harmful distraction. Not everything enjoyable is damaging, and not everything permissible is beneficial. But when so much time is spent consuming content that numbs the heart, you gradually lose your ability to feel deeply, reflect sincerely, or worship with presence. The heart begins to prefer ease over meaning, noise over silence, amusement over contemplation. Soon, you may find it difficult to focus in prayer, feel joy in worship, or find comfort in remembrance. This is not because your heart is broken. It is because it is overwhelmed with distractions and underfed with what it was created for. Connection with Allah. Choosing what you consume is an act of self-respect and spiritual responsibility. You cannot completely control the world, and you cannot avoid every harmful influence. But you can decide what you intentionally let in. When you filter your inputs, you naturally begin to filter your emotions. You feel lighter, calmer, and more grounded because the heart is no longer overwhelmed. Peace becomes easier to access, and contentment becomes more natural. The heart flourishes when you protect it, and it weakens when you leave it open to everything without discernment. Ultimately, the heart reflects whatever it is fed. If you want a heart filled with peace, hope, and trust in Allah, you must nourish it with things that bring you closer to Him and distance it from things that darken the soul. Every small choice shapes the heart. What you consume today becomes who you are tomorrow. The Quran, is the healing you are searching for, because it reaches places within the human heart that nothing else can reach. People try many paths to soothe their pain: distractions, relationships, success, entertainment, travel, or even silence. But there remains a part of the soul that only divine words can touch. The Quran is not simply a book of guidance. It is a companion, a comforter, and a mirror that reveals who you are and who you can become. When life feels heavy, confusing, or empty, turning to the Quran is like stepping into a space where your Creator speaks directly to you. Even if your mind does not fully grasp every meaning, your heart absorbs the mercy woven into every verse. There is something uniquely soothing about hearing or reciting the Quran. Its rhythm, its structure, and the sound of its recitation are unlike any other language. The heart recognizes it even if the tongue has not mastered it. Allah describes the Quran as a healing for the hearts because it treats doubts, sadness, fear, and hopelessness at their roots. When you feel lost, a single verse reminding you that Allah is near is enough to bring the first light back into your chest. When you are overwhelmed, a verse describing Allah's mercy softens the tightness in your breathing. When you feel alone, a verse promising that He is with the patient gives you strength. The Quran responds to emotions in a way nothing else can, because it was sent down for the very purpose of healing the believer's inner world, engaging with the Quran, and also realigns your perspective on life. When you immerse yourself in the world without the guidance of revelation, your priorities easily become distorted. Small problems feel enormous, temporary failures feel permanent, and blessings fade into the background unnoticed. The Quran brings balance back to the mind. Verses about the temporary nature of this world remind you not to cling too tightly to things that will eventually pass. Verses about the hereafter lift you above the noise of daily struggles and reconnect you with your purpose. Verses about patience and trust remind you that your role is effort, while the outcome belongs entirely to Allah. These reminders reshape how you interpret hardships, losses, and delays. What once felt unbearable becomes meaningful, because the Quran teaches you that every moment of your life is intertwined with divine wisdom. Another way the Quran heals is by grounding you in remembrance. When you recite or reflect on its verses, you are constantly reminded of who Allah is, His power, His knowledge, His mercy, His forgiveness, His closeness. The more you remember Him, the more your worries shrink. Fear is replaced with trust, confusion with clarity, and restlessness with serenity. The Quran turns your attention away from everything you cannot control and redirects it to the One who controls everything. This shift alone releases a tremendous amount of emotional pressure. The heart becomes lighter because it stops carrying burdens that were never meant for it. Even small, consistent interactions with the Quran can create profound change. You do not need hours of study to feel its healing. Even 10 minutes a day can transform your inner state. Listening to a recitation while resting can calm an anxious mind. Reading a few verses before sleeping can protect your heart from despair. Reflecting on a single ayah can inspire you for an entire day. What matters is not the quantity, but the sincerity. The Quran responds to hearts that approach it with humility and openness, even if their recitation is imperfect. The more you return to the Quran, the more you will experience its companionship. You will find that certain verses seem to speak directly to your situation. You will discover layers of meaning that didn't resonate before. You will feel seen and understood by your Creator in a way that no human being can offer. This is the kind of healing that isn't superficial. It is deep, lasting, and transformative. The Quran doesn't remove your challenges, but it strengthens you from within so you can walk through them with grace, grounding, and hope. It becomes a light in moments of darkness and a source of peace, even when nothing in your external circumstances has changed. Serving others opens the doors of happiness because it shifts the focus of your heart from your own struggles to the needs of someone else, and in doing so, it awakens a part of the soul that often lies dormant. Human beings were created with a natural inclination toward compassion and connection. When you extend kindness, offer support, or ease someone's burden, you activate the part of your heart that feels purposeful, useful, and alive. This feeling is not accidental. It is the spiritual law Allah placed within us, that when you give, you receive, and when you help someone rise, Allah lifts you as well. Many people believe happiness comes from what they gain: more comfort, more money, more praise, more security. But often, the opposite happens. The more people focus on themselves, the heavier their hearts become. They notice their flaws more, amplify their problems, and feel isolated in their struggles. But when you help others, even in a small way, your focus shifts outward. You step out of the bubble of your own pain and connect with the humanity in front of you. This connection softens your heart, broadens your perspective, and reminds you that you're not alone in your challenges. Serving others also creates movement in the heart. Sadness often grows when the heart becomes stagnant. When a person spends too much time thinking, worrying, or replaying painful memories, acts of service break that stagnation. Visiting someone who's sick, offering a listening ear, feeding someone in need, or simply being present for another person activates emotional energy. It brings you into a space where you are no longer defined by your pain, but by what you can offer despite your pain. This shift strengthens the soul. It teaches you that even when you're hurting, you still have something valuable to give, and that realization alone begins to heal the heart. There is also a spiritual promise attached to serving others. The Prophet said that Allah continues to help a servant as long as the servant is helping his brother. This means that when you make someone else's difficulty lighter, Allah makes your difficulty lighter. It may not happen instantly or in the way you expect, but there is a divine reciprocity in every act of kindness. Sometimes Allah lifts your sadness through an unexpected blessing, sometimes through inner peace, sometimes through clarity, and sometimes through sending someone who helps you just as you helped another. You never lose by giving. Serving others also cultivates gratitude. When you witness someone else's challenges, an illness you don't have, a loss you haven't experienced, a hardship you were protected from, you begin to see your blessings with clearer eyes. Gratitude grows naturally when you see what others endure. At the same time, you learn empathy and patience. You stop assuming that others have perfect lives and begin to understand the quiet battles people carry behind polite smiles. This understanding makes your heart gentler and your expectations kinder. And both of these qualities make relationships more meaningful and peaceful. Sometimes, people hesitate to serve others because they feel empty themselves. They think they have nothing to offer. But acts of service are not measured by size. A smile counts, a prayer counts, a message checking on someone counts, a moment of sincere listening counts. Service is about presence, not extravagance. Even the smallest act done sincerely can have a profound impact on both the giver and the receiver. What matters is the intention to bring relief, joy, or comfort to another soul. Serving others also strengthens your relationship with Allah. When you give for His sake, to seek His pleasure and follow His command, the act becomes a form of worship. You are imitating the qualities Allah Himself loves: mercy, generosity, compassion. This imitation brings you spiritually closer to Him. And closeness to Allah is one of the deepest sources of happiness a heart can experience. You begin to feel that your life has meaning beyond your own desires, and that you are contributing to goodness in the world, even in small ways. Ultimately, helping others reminds you that the world is not just a place of taking. It is a place of giving, connecting, and uplifting. It teaches you that your presence matters, your actions matter, and your kindness matters. And when you understand that you can be a source of light for someone else, a light begins to grow inside of you as well.